In 1864 Wyoming Territory, wealthy rancher Nathaniel Cross had everything money could buy, except the one thing that mattered most: someone to share it with. When he witnessed a desperate young widow trading her wedding ring for flour to feed her hungry child, he made an impulsive decision that would change both their lives forever. But can a marriage born from desperation truly become something worth more than gold? Thunder rolled across the Wyoming sky like angry drums, but Nathaniel Cross barely noticed the storm brewing outside Murphy's saloon. The year 1864 had brought nothing but empty days to the richest man in Cheyenne, and tonight felt no different. His whiskey sat untouched, while cowboys laughed and played cards at nearby tables, their voices mixing with the clatter of coins and the shuffle of boots on wooden floors. Nathaniel owned more cattle than he could count, had gold hidden in 3 different banks, and lived in the biggest house for 50 miles around. Yet every morning, he woke up to silence so thick, it felt like drowning. The other men in town treated him like a king, tipping their hats and speaking in respectful whispers. But no one ever sat down to share a real conversation. "Another drink, Mr. Cross?" asked Sally, the saloon girl with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "No, thank you, Sally." Nathaniel's voice came out rougher than he intended. He watched her hurry away, probably relieved to escape his gloomy presence. Outside, rain began pelting the windows, like tiny fists demanding attention. The autumn wind howled through the gaps in the wooden walls, carrying the smell of wet earth and dying leaves. Nathaniel pulled his expensive coat tighter around his shoulders, but the cold he felt came from somewhere deeper than his bones. At the poker table, 3 cowboys were arguing about whose horse could run faster. Their laughter exploded like fireworks, filling the room with warmth that never seemed to reach Nathaniel's corner. He remembered being their age once, full of dreams and surrounded by friends who saw him as just another young man trying to make his fortune. Now, at 32, fortune had found him, but friendship had disappeared like smoke in the wind. The saloon door burst open, letting in a gust of cold air and a soaking wet stranger. The man shook himself like a dog, sending water drops flying across the floor. "Terrible night to be traveling," he announced to no one in particular. Several cowboys called out greetings and offers to buy the stranger a drink. Within minutes, the newcomer was surrounded by friendly faces, sharing stories and warming himself by their company. Nathaniel watched this scene play out with bitter understanding. This was how normal people connected with each other. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor like a protest. The sound made several men glance his way, their conversations pausing just long enough to acknowledge his movement with respectful nods. Then they returned to their fun, and Nathaniel walked toward the door alone. The rain hit his face like cold needles, but he welcomed the sharp sensation. At least it was something real, something that touched him without fear or hesitation. His horse waited patiently under the covered area, and Nathaniel patted the animal's neck with genuine affection. "Just you and me again, Thunder," he whispered to the dark stallion. As he mounted his horse, lightning split the sky above Cheyenne's main street, illuminating the empty boardwalks and closed shop windows. Tomorrow would bring another day of managing his vast ranch, counting his endless money, and eating dinner by himself in a dining room built for 12 people. But tonight, as thunder answered the lightning's call, something felt different in the air, as if the storm was washing away old patterns to make room for something completely unexpected. The morning sun painted Cheyenne's dusty streets gold, but inside Henderson's general store, shadows gathered around a scene that made Nathaniel's chest tighten with unexpected pain. A young woman stood at the wooden counter, her black dress marking her as a widow, while a small boy pressed against her legs like he was trying to disappear. "This ring belonged to my grandmother," the woman said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Surely it's worth more than a bag of flour." Store owner Henderson held up the thin gold band, squinting at it through his spectacles with the expression of a man examining a dead fish. "Mrs. Catherine Wells, I've told you before," Sentiment don't add value to metal. This little thing might buy you flour and some beans, but that's being generous. Nathaniel had entered the store to pay his monthly bill, but now he found himself frozen near the door, watching this private moment of desperation unfold. The woman, Catherine, couldn't be older than 25, with auburn hair pulled back tight and eyes the color of stormy skies. Her son looked about 4 years old, thin in the way that spoke of too many missed meals. "Please, Mr. Henderson," Catherine whispered, glancing down at her boy. "Winter's coming, and William needs proper food to stay strong." Henderson shrugged, like her problems were no concern of his. "Business is business, ma'am. Take my offer or find someone else willing to trade for jewelry." Catherine's shoulders sagged, but she nodded. "Very well. I'll take what you're offering." The little boy tugged on his mother's worn dress. "Mama, will we have bread tonight?" "Yes, sweetheart," Catherine replied, though her voice cracked slightly on the words, "We'll make do." Nathaniel felt something sharp twist inside his chest as he watched this scene. Here was real struggle, real love, real courage, everything his wealthy life seemed to lack. This woman was fighting to feed her child with the same determination he used to count his profits, but her battle meant something that his never could. Henderson reached for his cash box with irritating slowness, clearly enjoying his power over the desperate woman. "Flour's gotten more expensive lately," he said, as if just remembering this fact. "Might have to reduce my offer a bit more." Catherine's face went pale, but she lifted her chin with quiet dignity. "How much?" "Half what I said before. Times are hard for everyone, you understand." The lie hung in the air like bad smoke. Henderson's store overflowed with goods, and his belly showed he never missed a meal. This was pure meanness, dressed up as business sense. William pressed closer to his mother, somehow understanding that the man behind the counter was being cruel. "Mama?" he whispered. Catherine closed her eyes for just a moment, gathering strength from some deep well inside herself. When she opened them again, her voice was quiet but firm. "I'll take it." Something inside Nathaniel snapped like a dry branch in a storm. He'd watched enough cruelty disguised as commerce, seen enough people use their power to hurt those who had none. His own loneliness suddenly seemed like a luxury compared to Catherine's real struggle. "Actually," Nathaniel said, stepping forward from the shadows near the door, "I have a different proposition." Every head in the store turned toward him. Catherine's eyes widened with surprise and wariness. Henderson's mouth fell open like a trap door. Even little William stared up at the tall stranger who had just changed the entire direction of their morning. Nathaniel's heart hammered against his ribs as he realized he was about to do something that would shock everyone in the room, including himself. But sometimes the most important decisions came not from careful planning, but from the sudden recognition that staying silent meant watching something precious get destroyed. What words would he choose that could transform 3 lives forever? "I'll pay 10 times what that ring is worth." The words tumbled from Nathaniel's mouth like coins spilling from a torn pouch. Every person in Henderson's store turned to stare. Catherine's face went white as fresh snow. Her little boy pressed closer to her black dress, sensing something big was happening. The storekeeper's jaw dropped open like a broken gate. "Mr. Cross, sir, I don't think you understand." Henderson started to speak. "Not for the ring," Nathaniel said, his heart beating fast as a galloping horse. He looked straight at Catherine, seeing how she held her head high, even though her hands shook. "For something much more important. Mrs. Wells, would you marry me?" The big clock on the wall seemed to tick louder in the sudden quiet. Catherine's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish pulled from water. Her storm-gray eyes searched his face as if looking for answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. "Sir, I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Nathaniel Cross. I own the Double C Ranch past the hill outside town. I'm 32 years old, never been married, and..." He paused, surprised by his own words. "I'm tired of eating dinner by myself every night." A woman near the pickle barrel gasped, Two cowboys by the door started whispering to each other. Catherine's son tugged on her dress. "Mama, I'm hungry," the boy said in a small voice. Catherine looked down at her child, then back at Nathaniel. The lamplight made her auburn hair glow like copper pennies. "Why would you want to marry someone you never met before? Why would you think about saying yes?" he asked back. Their eyes met across the small space between them. In that moment, something passed between them, understanding of what it meant to carry heavy burdens alone. Catherine had been widowed for 8 months, struggling to keep food on the table. Nathaniel had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but no one to share even a simple meal. Henderson cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." "No," Catherine said firmly. "If Mr. Cross wants an answer, he can have it here." She straightened her shoulders. "What exactly are you offering?" "A home, safety for you and your boy, separate rooms if that's what you want, respect, and—" Nathaniel's voice grew softer. "A chance for neither of us to be alone anymore." Catherine's fingers tightened around her wedding ring. The gold band had belonged to her late husband James, but it couldn't feed her son or pay for shelter. She looked at William, who was watching the strange man with curious eyes. What would people say about such a quick marriage? "They'd say I'm the smartest man in all of Wyoming territory," Nathaniel replied. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, promising rain before nightfall. Judge Morrison's office smelled like old books and pipe tobacco when they arrived 2 hours later. Catherine had insisted on laying down rules first. Separate bedrooms, mutual respect, and William would always come first in her heart. "Are you certain about this arrangement?" the gray-haired judge asked, looking over his spectacles. "I've seen too many hasty marriages end in heartbreak." "We understand each other perfectly," Nathaniel said, though his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. Catherine had changed from her faded mourning dress into her only good outfit, a blue dress with tiny white flowers. Someone had lent her a small bouquet of wildflowers. William sat in a corner chair, playing with a wooden horse he'd found on the judge's desk. "Very well then." Judge Morrison opened his big leather book. "Do you, Nathaniel Cross, promise to take Catherine Wells as your wife, to care for her in sickness and health, for richer or poorer?" "I do." Nathaniel's voice was steady now. He slipped his grandmother's silver ring onto Catherine's finger. The sapphire stone caught the afternoon light streaming through the window. "Do you, Catherine Wells, promise to take Nathaniel Cross as your husband, to stand by him through good times and bad, until death parts you?" Catherine looked at William, who had stopped playing to watch the grown-ups. Her son gave her a tiny smile and nodded, as if telling her it was okay. "I do." The judge smiled. "Then, by the power given to me by Wyoming territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Nathaniel leaned forward and gently kissed Catherine's cheek. It was soft and quick, like a butterfly landing on a flower petal. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cross," Judge Morrison said, closing his book. "May you find the happiness you both deserve." As they signed the marriage papers, Catherine whispered, "What will the townspeople think when they hear about this?" "That I'm the luckiest man between here and California," Nathaniel whispered back. Outside the judge's office, word of the unusual wedding was already spreading through Cheyenne like spilled water soaking into dry ground. Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house was telling anyone who would listen. The barber was shaking his head in amazement. Even the preacher was scratching his beard and wondering about this strange turn of events. William tugged on Nathaniel's coat. "Are you my new papa?" Nathaniel knelt down to the boy's level. "Would you like me to be?" William nodded seriously. "Mama cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping. Maybe you can make her happy again." Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but they were different tears than the ones she'd shed in recent months. These tears carried hope instead of despair. As they climbed into Nathaniel's wagon to head home to the ranch, thunder rumbled closer, and the first drops of rain began to fall on the dusty street. Thunder crashed overhead as a rider charged toward the ranch house, his horse kicking up mud from the morning rain. Nathaniel looked up from repairing fence posts, his hammer freezing mid-swing when he recognized the wild-eyed man approaching. Catherine stepped onto the porch, her face going pale as she clutched William close to her side. "Daniel Wells," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. The man dismounted roughly, nearly stumbling as his boots hit the soggy ground. His clothes were dirty and torn, his beard unkempt, and his eyes burned with a dangerous mix of grief and anger. Daniel had been James's older brother, the one who always believed the world owed him something. "Sister-in-law," Daniel spat, the words dripping with bitterness. "Living quite comfortably, I see." Nathaniel dropped his tools and walked slowly toward the house, keeping his movements calm but ready. He'd dealt with desperate men before, and Daniel had the look of someone with nothing left to lose. "What brings you to Wyoming territory, Daniel?" Catherine asked, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "What brings me?" Daniel laughed harshly. "You disappear without a word, abandon the farm in Kansas, and marry some rich stranger. Meanwhile, I'm left dealing with James's debts and the bank breathing down my neck." William pressed closer to his mother, sensing the tension in the air. The little boy's eyes darted between the adults, trying to understand why this stranger made his mama so scared. "James's debts died with him," Catherine said firmly. "The bank took the farm. There was nothing left." "Nothing left?" Daniel's hand moved toward the gun at his hip. "What about the money James said he had hidden? What about his share of our father's land?" Nathaniel stepped closer, positioning himself between Daniel and his family. The word surprised him. When had he started thinking of them as his family? But there was no time to wonder about that now. "There never was any hidden money," Catherine explained patiently. "James talked big dreams, but you know that. And father's land was sold years ago to pay his gambling debts." "Lies!" Daniel shouted, his face turning red. "You found it, didn't you? Found James's stash and ran off to start fresh with your rich husband." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a wildfire. Nathaniel could see how Daniel's mind worked, seeing Catherine's clean dress, the well-built house, the obvious comfort, and assuming she'd been hiding wealth all along. "Daniel, please," Catherine said softly. "You're James's brother. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then pay me what you owe." Daniel's voice cracked with desperation. "I lost everything because of James's promises. The farm, my wife. She left me when the money ran out. All I have left is what's rightfully mine." The storm seemed to pause, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the three adults locked in their tense standoff, while young William watched with wide, frightened eyes. Nathaniel's mind raced, calculating distances, watching Daniel's trigger finger, and wondering if words could solve this before violence became the only option. But would Daniel listen to reason? Or had grief and desperation pushed him too far past the point of no return? William's small voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. "Mama, why is the sad man yelling?" The innocent question seemed to deflate something in Daniel's chest. His hand trembled as it hovered near his weapon. And for the first time since arriving, he really looked at the child. Really saw James's nephew standing there, confused and frightened. "I'm not." Daniel started, then stopped. His shoulders sagged, as if a heavy burden had suddenly doubled in weight. "I'm not a bad man, boy. I'm just tired." Catherine saw the crack in Daniel's armor and stepped forward carefully. "You haven't eaten in days, have you?" Daniel's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, betraying him. He looked embarrassed, like a child caught stealing cookies. "Food costs money I don't have." "When did you last sleep in a real bed?" Nathaniel asked quietly. "Can't remember," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once. Without the anger holding him up, Daniel looked like what he really was, a broken man who'd lost his way after losing everything that mattered. Catherine made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She walked past Nathaniel, past the danger, and placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. "James loved you. Even when you fought, even when you disagreed about money or land or anything else. He always said you were the brother who looked out for him." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I failed him. I was supposed to take care of things after he died, and I made everything worse." "Grief makes us do strange things," Catherine said softly. "But James wouldn't want you living like this." Nathaniel watched the scene unfold, remembering his own loneliness before Catherine and William came into his life. Sometimes the people who needed help the most were the hardest to help because their pride got in the way. "My foreman's getting old," Nathaniel said suddenly. "Been thinking about hiring someone younger, someone who knows cattle and farming both." Daniel looked up, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the job pays fair wages, comes with a small cabin, and includes meals with the family." Nathaniel paused, meeting Catherine's grateful eyes. "If you want it, why would you help me?" Daniel asked, suspicious again. "I just threatened your wife." "Because everyone deserves a second chance," Nathaniel replied. "And because sometimes the people who seem like enemies are just people who've forgotten how to ask for help." William tugged on Daniel's coat. "Are you going to stay and eat with us? Mama makes really good biscuits." Daniel knelt down to the boy's level, seeing James in the child's features. "Would you like that, William?" "Yes, and maybe you can teach me about horses, like Uncle James did." The mention of his dead brother brought fresh tears to Daniel's eyes, but this time they weren't tears of anger or desperation. They were tears of relief, of hope, of finding family when he thought he was completely alone. As the storm clouds began to break apart overhead, letting afternoon sunlight stream through, Daniel Wells made a choice that would change all their lives. But would he be able to keep the promise he was about to make? Or were some wounds too deep to heal? The bitter Wyoming wind howled like a wounded animal as Catherine stumbled through the snow toward the barn, her heart pounding with terror. Something was terribly wrong. The horses were screaming inside. An orange light flickered through the wooden walls. "Fire!" She screamed toward the house, but her voice disappeared in the storm. Her hands shook as she threw open the barn doors, and smoke poured out like black ghosts. Inside, she could see Midnight, Nathaniel's prized stallion, rearing and kicking at his stall door. The other horses whinnied in panic as flames licked at the hay bales stacked near the back wall. Without thinking, Catherine plunged into the smoke. The heat hit her face like a slap, but she kept moving. One by one, she released the horses, slapping their rumps to send them running into the safety of the snowy night. Midnight was last, his eyes rolling white with fear. "Easy, boy," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the smoke. As she reached for his halter, a burning beam crashed down behind her, blocking her escape route. That's when she heard William's voice, small and frightened. "Mama, Mama, where are you?" Her blood turned to ice. Her 4-year-old son was somewhere in this deadly storm looking for her. She had to get out, had to find him before he got lost in the blizzard or walked into the flames. "I'm coming, William," she called, leading Midnight toward what she hoped was still a safe exit. Meanwhile, Nathaniel rode hard across the frozen pasture, his horse's hooves throwing up chunks of snow and ice. He'd seen the glow from 2 miles away while checking the cattle in the far field. Daniel rode beside him, both men pushing their mounts to the limit. "The whole barn's going up," Daniel shouted over the wind. Nathaniel's chest felt tight with fear. Catherine and William should be safe in the house, but knowing Catherine, she would never let the horses burn. His wife had a heart too big for her own good. As they thundered into the ranch yard, Nathaniel saw William standing in the snow near the house, crying and calling for his mother. The boy wore only his nightshirt and was shivering violently. "Daniel, take William inside!" Nathaniel yelled, jumping from his horse before it fully stopped. "Get him warm!" He ran toward the barn, where flames now shot through the roof like angry fingers reaching for the sky. Through the smoke and firelight, he saw a figure leading a horse, Catherine, covered in soot but alive. "Thank God," he breathed, running to help her. But their relief was short-lived. As Catherine stumbled into his arms, coughing and gasping for clean air, they heard a new sound that made their hearts stop. hoofbeats, many of them approaching fast through the storm. Rustlers. Daniel's voice came from the house doorway. William safe in his arms. I count at least 6 riders. They probably set the fire to scatter us. Nathaniel felt Catherine tense against him. After months of peace, trouble had found them again. But this time, they wouldn't face it alone. The riders emerged from the swirling snow like ghosts, their faces hidden behind bandanas, guns already drawn. But instead of the desperate rustlers Nathaniel expected, the leader pulled down his mask to reveal a face that made Catherine gasp. "Sheriff Martinez," she breathed, hardly believing her eyes. The sheriff from her old town in Kansas sat tall in his saddle, his badge glinting in the firelight from the burning barn. Behind him rode 5 other lawmen, all looking grim and determined. "Mrs. Wells, I mean, Mrs. Cross." The sheriff nodded respectfully. "Sorry about the dramatic entrance. We've been tracking a dangerous man across 3 territories, and his trail led straight here." "What man?" Nathaniel asked, still holding Catherine protectively. Before the sheriff could answer, a shot rang out from the house. Everyone spun around to see a figure climbing out of a back window, a thin man with wild hair and desperate eyes. "Clayton Wells," Catherine whispered, and Nathaniel felt her whole body go rigid with fear. "James's older brother," she explained quickly. "He was supposed to be in prison." Clayton stumbled through the snow, clutching his shoulder where blood was seeping through his shirt. He'd been hiding in their house, probably for days, waiting for the right moment to strike. "You thought you were so smart, little Catherine," Clayton snarled, raising his gun toward them. "Marrying rich, thinking you could forget your debts to my family." But Daniel stepped out of the house then, his own rifle pointed steady at Clayton. "She doesn't owe your family anything," he said firmly. "And I should know. I used to think the same fool thoughts you're thinking now." The 2 brothers-in-law faced each other across the snowy yard, while the barn burned behind them and the sheriff's men slowly circled closer. For a moment, nobody moved. Then William's small voice broke the silence. "Uncle Daniel, I'm scared." Those 3 simple words changed everything. Daniel's face softened, and Clayton seemed to realize for the first time that a child was watching this whole terrible scene. "Clayton," Catherine said gently, stepping forward despite Nathaniel's protective grip. "James wouldn't want this. He loved his family. All of his family. Even you." Clayton's gun wavered. He died because of debts, because of money problems. "He died because he got sick," Catherine replied. "Not because of money, not because of anyone's fault. Sometimes bad things just happen, and we have to choose whether to let them make us bitter or make us better." The sheriff moved closer, ready to act, but Catherine held up her hand. "You can put the gun down," she told Clayton. "You can come inside, get warm, eat some hot food. We can talk about this like family should." For a long moment, Clayton stood there in the snow, blood on his shirt and tears on his cheeks. Finally, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "I've been running so long," he whispered. "I forgot what it felt like to have people care." As the sheriff's men took Clayton into custody gently, because Catherine asked them to, Nathaniel marveled at his wife's courage. She had faced fire, danger, and family pain all in one night, and somehow found room in her heart for forgiveness. Later, as they watched the last flames die down and the barn become just a pile of smoking timber, Catherine leaned against Nathaniel's shoulder. "We'll rebuild," she said simply. "Yes," Nathaniel agreed, holding her close. "We will."